Hi, I'm Andrea. Soon I must enter a university, but I haven't chosen one yet. All of them are waiting for me because my grades are excellent and I have loads of scholarships and awards. My state even named me the smartest kid because I speak 17 languages. It is easy to be a girl wonder. I'm just memorizing quickly and I never tire. Daddy cares for me so much. He patronizes me all my life. He cultivated love for people in me and I want to help them. I told him as much at breakfast. I want to be a neurosurgeon and perform complicated surgeries. Suddenly Dad threw his spoon and said no. What do you mean no? It turned out he planned to send me to the Harvard Business School. But that's dull. Why do I have to do finance when I dream of surgery? I'm just made for it. My health is so sound. I've never been ill in my life and I never feel tired. That's it for hard 15-hour surgeries. This is my dream. But Dad didn't want to listen. How so? Dad had never argued and never interfered in my hobbies before. For the first time, I felt like crying in despair. I closed my eyes and fell into darkness. Oh, have I fallen asleep? But it's only 3 p.m. I tried to get up from the bed, but felt incredibly weak. It was so hard to move my limbs. Could I have fallen ill? For the first time in my life. I need to warm up a bit, or even better, to read the anatomy textbook. I could barely reach the desk. I opened the book and gasped. It was all Greek to me. I had my very first biology book in my desk, the one I'd read when I was 6. The bones, the blood vessels. It seemed I was seeing it all for the first time. Something was very wrong. I must tell Dad immediately. His room was opened, but he wasn't there. I walked inside and saw a blinking computer screen. I looked closer and realized with a jolt that I didn't understand this code. But I knew all the programming languages yesterday. What's wrong with me? I minimized the window and saw something like an X-ray with my name on it. But there was a main board instead of my brain, a battery instead of my heart. The bones were replaced with some kind of plates, and cables imitated the blood vessels. But the worst of all was still coming. In the file description it was said that Andrea the robot was created on December the 1st, 2005, and all the tests were successful. Then Dad came in and asked what was I doing there. I stared at him silently. Oh, how I wanted to cry, but I couldn't. Dad, am I a robot? No, sweetheart, you are a human with a heart and a soul, and this is just my hobby. That was the answer I expected, but he said, yes, Andrea, I've created you 17 years ago. Dad said he worked in a scientific institution when he was young, and he had lots of ideas, but his bosses were just cutting it all down and even stole his robotics discovery. He was so disappointed and decided to continue researching on his own. Thus, he created the ultimate biorobot, me. I don't know what shock is, but it seems that moment I experienced exactly this. I didn't leave my room for the entire day. How to live on? How to get used to the thought I was no wonder girl, but just a program? And then I recalled I hadn't told Dad about those strange symptoms I had right before our talk. Dad said he deleted the knowledge and drained my battery to 5%. I must study economics, not medicine, and throw all the other garbage from my head. What? How could you? And I thought of you as my father. You're cruel! No, you're a monster! Then he came very close and whispered he'd destroy me if I didn't obey. Then I got it. The villain must have been stopped. I wrote to Dad's institution I had a scientific discovery. A postgrad called Louis replied, and that same day he came to me, pretending he was a Harvard tutor for gifted kids. There was no time, and I told him everything as it was, and to prove it, I gave him a flash drive to which I'd secretly copied the data of my origin from Dad's computer. Louis didn't believe me but took the drive. I'd waited for 3 days, but there was no call. Could that all be in vain? And then someone knocked on the door. It was Louis. He asked what was my plan. Firstly, we need to find out what Dad wants. All the info must be in his room. You sneak there and I stay with my father so that he doesn't become suspicious. In the evening, I suggested Dad and I played chess. Try to beat a computer, huh? Dad was a bad player, but I had to let him win, to appease him. He shouted, "Checkmate! My victory! It needs celebration!" and went to his room for a bottle of whiskey. Oh no, Louis was there. I rushed after Dad, but he was leaving the room already, in high spirits and with the bottle. Phew, that was close. I ran into the room to text Louis, but he was waiting there already. He claimed right away that Dad planned to create 100 of perfect robots and found the largest empire of a company with them. Thus, he wanted to change the whole world. Hell no, Daddy. If I'm not becoming a surgeon, you won't be the master of the world. The plan was developed quickly. Dad was a little buzzy and most likely fell asleep already, so you, Louis, must wipe his drive and delete all the files. I can't do this cause Dad wiped this skill. I'd glimpsed inside Dad's bedroom. He was sound asleep. We can go. While Louis was occupied with the computer, I destroyed all the paper documents. We must hurry. Suddenly we heard footsteps. Oh no! Had he woken up? Then my father stormed into the room shouting, "Traitor! I'll obliterate you!" He took a red button from his pocket and pressed it. Dear guests, and here is the prototype of the Model Z, a robot with free will imitation. Soon, an improved android will be built based on this robot. My colleague here, Dr. Louis, will tell you more of it. See, Daddy, how it all has turned. You wanted to destroy your daughter, but Louis was on time reprogramming me and switching your alarm system off. Now you're a robot, and I'm human. Like the story? We wait for your likes and comments. They inspire us.
I came to myself in a room with dim lights. My head was pounding horribly. What am I doing here? I tried to stand up, but I felt the straps under the sheet. What was going on? Suddenly, a disheveled old man in a scientist's robe ran up to me. The old man with the mad look said that now it was possible to start experiments and left the room in a hurry. My stomach went cold. I pulled my hand up with all my might, and the straps began to creak. I yanked my hand again and the strap snapped. Wow, how strong I am. It's better to leave this place. I ran into the hallway in just a sheet. Creepy scientific instruments hung everywhere. What was he doing here? I already saw the exit, but suddenly I noticed in the mirror that the sheet had fallen off me. What's the matter with me? I stepped closer, dropped the sheet to the floor, and was speechless. I looked like some kind of robo-monster. 85% of my body was made of iron and parts connected by wires. But I had a human head. But then I heard the scientist's voice behind me. Where are you going? Panic seized me, and I ran for the door as fast as I could. The old man ran after me. It seemed that he was about to grab me. Out of desperation, I hit the door with my shoulder and it flew out with a crash. I didn't know where to run because I didn't even remember where I lived. Random passersby shouted at my back that I was a freak. I ran to a parking lot, hid among the cars, and looked around. There was no pursuit. The thought of this creepy scientist catching me made me feel uneasy. I sat in the parking lot until the evening and did not dare to go out. I looked at the cars and realized the last thing I remembered was getting into an accident. And I was in a wedding dress, but I didn't know if I was a robot even then. My memories were very fragmentary, but if I had a wedding, then there was a groom. That's something. I needed to find him somehow. Only he could help me remember who I really was. Night fell, and I ventured out of my hiding place to find a quieter place. Suddenly, a red light flashed on my chest. I didn't notice it at first, but soon my vision began to darken. Maybe I was running out of charge. Like on my phone, I needed to try to charge myself. Oh man. Then an electric car passed me noiselessly. I barely managed to jump away, but stop. It was also somehow charged. I needed to find an electric vehicle charging station urgently. With the last of my strength, I trudged along the road. I thought I was going to pass out when I saw the lights of a station in the distance. If only they had electric recharging points. I quietly crept up to the station, looked around, and saw no wires, only hoses with gasoline. I was desperate, but suddenly, in the corner, I noticed a place with a wire. The station attendant was asleep behind the cash register. I crawled over to the wire, pulled it out, and plugged it into the socket on my chest. And wow, it fit! The light stopped blinking, and I felt my strength returning. But then a car pulled up at the station and shone its headlights on me. Heck, I looked around. The station attendant woke up and already noticed me. I didn't want to be arrested for theft. I took off, and in a couple of seconds, I was already very far away. When I was sure there was no pursuit, I stopped and sat down on the bench. Did I have to steal electricity from stations for the rest of my life now? In my desperation, I did notice a guy walking up to me. I wanted to run away, but he began to examine me with the words, "Wow, what a costume. What was he talking about?" Suddenly, the guy asked me for a link to my TikTok. What is TikTok? The guy laughed and showed me the app and 2 favorite accounts, Mermaids and Fire Girl. Popular superheroines. He decided that I was the same. I refused, but the guy thought I was being modest and still took a picture with me. I couldn't believe that someone would like me, because a bunch of people on the street just called me a monster. When he left, I thought about what he'd said. If this mermaid succeeded, I could also become famous. And then the groom from my past would see me and find me. This was the only way I could find out who I really was, a robot or a human. But I needed to get money for the phone. The next day I went to the park. I decided to take a picture with the children for money. The guy wanted a picture with me. At first, no one approached me, and I already thought that this was a stupid idea. But gradually, a whole queue was lined up for me. It turned out people love robots. But several times the kids called me a transformer. I tried not to pay attention, and by the end of the day, I had enough money for a smartphone. The next day, I registered in TikTok and made a couple of videos about my life. I was so worried when I uploaded them. But in vain, 500 people subscribed to me every day. A few weeks later, I was already one of the most popular bloggers and was even able to rent an apartment. I didn't think it would be so easy. People wrote hundreds of comments, but no one from the previous life ever appeared. And I so wanted to know, was I a robot or was I originally born a human? I didn't even know who I was. But in any case, I knew I had feelings, but the fans were only interested in how I changed and whether I can touch the water. Once, a follower with the nickname Joker asked how my mood was. I was surprised, because everyone thought that robots were not in the mood by 85%. The Joker almost immediately offered to meet, and I agreed. He spoke to me as if I were an ordinary person. The very next day, I was waiting for him in the cafe, and then the guy sat down at my table and introduced himself as the Joker. His face was scarred, and I was terrified. He immediately reached out to me and began to repeat, "Don't leave me. I love you." Hell, he was a psychopath. I mumbled that I had a lot to do and ran as fast as I could. The Joker started writing to me on all social media, but I blocked him everywhere. That's it. No more face-to-face meetings with fans. I kept using TikTok, hoping that someone from my past would notice me. But nothing happened. One day, I was returning home from an autograph session and suddenly I heard someone's footsteps. I turned around and saw a dark silhouette. I picked up the pace, but someone was shouting after me, "We need to talk." Oh no, it's the Joker, the crazy fan. I quickly ran back to the house and locked the door. Was he following me? The Joker was shouting something under the windows, but I didn't dare look out. With shaking hands, I called the police, and an hour later, a couple of big guys arrived and dragged the Joker away. I let out a sigh of relief and tried to sleep. This was already dangerous. I needed to delete TikTok and find another way to find out the truth about my past. The next day, I went to a fan meeting. There, I decided to say that I was done with TikTok and directly asked for help from my followers. When everyone gathered, I took a deep breath and said, "Friends, I don't really remember anything from my past. I don't know if I'm really a robot or a human. The room fell silent. I probably shouldn't have said that, but suddenly the audience burst out laughing. From all sides, it was hurt. She hypes! I had never felt so hurt in my life. In desperation, I ran to the back exit. None of the fans believed me. What a fool I was. When I opened the back door, I bumped into someone. I started to apologize, but then I was taken aback. This was the scientist. He looked even more creepy than he had a month ago. I backed away, but he pulled the remote out of his pocket and pressed the button. I immediately collapsed to the ground. What was going on? I couldn't even move. The scientist took my hand and dragged me along the ground. Help me! But no one heard my screams. I was finished. The scientist loaded me into his car and, muttering that the experiments were not over yet, got behind the wheel. The last thing I saw was the confused Joker sitting in the car outside the club. At that moment, the red light on my chest flashed again, and I blacked out. I came to myself in the same room. The scientist muttered softly that he was disappointed with my behavior. I hope the next model will be more accommodating, he added. The scientist took out a saw and held it into my lap. Just a little bit and he would cut me into pieces. No, please. But suddenly I heard some noise. The door opened and the Joker ran into the room. Behind him, the crowd of my fans was roaring. I couldn't believe my eyes. The fans threw the scientist to the floor and tied him up. The Joker took the remote out of his pocket and turned on my body. I didn't understand anything. Why would he do this? He was my crazy fan. But the Joker asked abruptly, "Don't you recognize me, Jen?" I frowned, puzzled. What are you talking about? The Joker smiled and said his name was Kyle. He was my groom. And I was kidnapped on my wedding day. These words made my throat go dry. So I was looking for him all this time. Kyle told me that we had loved each other since childhood and wanted to get married. But on the day of the wedding, we had an accident. Kyle was saved and he escaped with scars. And then he stopped talking. What happened to me? Kyle hesitated and said, "And he died right at the scene of the accident." I couldn't believe it. But how? Here I stand. I'm alive. Kyle said that before the funeral, my body was stolen and he tried to find me, but in vain. He no longer believed that he would succeed, but suddenly he saw an interview with a robot that had my face. He thought he was imagining it, but he found me in TikTok and was stunned. I was alive. Tears welled up in my eyes, and suddenly I saw in the disfigured face of the Joker my dear Kyle, whom I had loved so much all my life. Oh, Kyle, it's so good that you found me. A few months later, we got married. Our wedding was discussed by the whole country. After that, twice as many people followed me, but I didn't care anymore. It was enough for me to have one person who saw me not as a freak from TikTok, but as an ordinary girl who also had feelings. I looked at Kyle and saw the most beautiful man on earth without even noticing the scars on his face. After all, love and kindness, that's what makes us truly beautiful.